Welcome back, everybody. What were you doing when you were a teenager? Hanging out at the mall, pining over a crush, maybe getting lost in your own angst? Our next two guests have a different story because much of their teen years have been spent on the front lines of climate action.
Today's youth, Today's youth climate movement is a force to be reckoned with, and we are so excited to have these two in studio today. Please welcome Sophia, Mathur, and Zoe Keary-Matzner. Welcome to the social. Okay, so we say youth, we're like, how old are you? Zoe, you just turned 17. Happy belated birthday, by the way. And even though you've been doing this work for a while, this actually started when you were a very little girl. So take us back to when climate became something passionate and important to you.
I honestly don't remember. I think it's always sort of been there as like a thing I'm concerned about. I remember when I was like 5 or 6 and I would like blow out the candles on my birthday cake, I would wish that climate change wouldn't exist.
Oh my gosh.
So I feel like for a lot of young people it's sort of similar, like it's always sort of been present. Because we're growing up at a time where we're seeing the impacts all around the world, or we have family that's directly impacted. And we really can't ignore it because we're getting older and we're gonna see it get worse and worse. But right now, the people who have the power over what that future looks like aren't really listening to us.
Wow. And Sophia, we understand that you started attending climate lobbying meetings with your mom at age 7. What was it like being in those rooms? Like, do you remember that feeling and what you were taking away from those? Oh my God.
Yeah, so it was kind of overwhelming because I was like a 7 or 8-year-old and there was like these whole bunch of adults that were talking about things that I didn't really understand because I had gone to these meetings to kind of educate myself and learn more because to me it was kind of more of my mom's job, but I wanted to learn about it. But one thing I did know is that climate change was going to affect animals and I really loved animals and I still do. So I would actually spend my time drawing photos of cats, or tigers, or lions, and all the animals that I love.
I love that we had
And at the end of the meeting, I would give it to the politicians, and I started to notice that it would actually catch the attention of them. Like, yes, they'd be listening to the information, but at the end of the meetings, they would ask me questions, and I'd go back to these politicians' offices later, and they would still have these cards that I had made for them when I was 8. Like years later.
That's incredible.
Now, you are both part of a landmark youth-led climate lawsuit against Ontario's provincial government. So that lawsuit legally challenged the government's decision to weaken future climate targets. The case was ultimately dismissed, but I understand you will be appealing that decision, and that will be happening early in January. So, Zoe, what is the message behind that lawsuit, and also why do you guys keep pushing? It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I really think, like, we know that right now is the most critical decade for action on the climate crisis that we'll ever have, essentially. And I think what this case is saying is that governments have a responsibility and a duty to protect their citizens, and that means taking the necessary climate action. Especially like young people, young Indigenous people who are going to be most impacted, it's the government's responsibility to take that action to really protect our rights. And so that means not weakening your climate targets when you get elected. And it's also showing that young people really do have a voice in this. Like, while we might not be able to vote, we do have legal rights. And that's what this case is trying to get recognized.
Wow. It's impressive. Sophia, you've worked alongside Greta Thunberg, and you were the first to bring her Fridays for Future movement to North America, which is incredible. And you and Zoe are both very involved in organizing these school strikes, the rallies, and the marches. So, Sophia, what success or impact have you seen from these demonstrations?
Yeah, so in my city, Sudbury, we got our city to declare a climate emergency. And what this is showing is that we've kind of built a connection in between youth that are very concerned about the climate crisis and politicians that can bring that to Queen's Park or can bring that to Parliament Hill. So yeah, and also as well, with my events, we've had the opportunity to bring schools over and younger kids.
Look at you!
And there are a lot of kids out there that were like me, and they care about the environment, they care about animals, but they don't know how to go about that. So there's definitely more engagement now for them to have a chance to spread their voice and talk to politicians. So
And you find that it's always growing too, the engagement?
Yes, I've had kids come up to me after my event and saying, like, I never knew what to do, but this is really fun, and I want to come to more events.
Oh, that's incredible.
You know, I love the optimism and the energy and the ambition that's behind this. But Zoe, you are inheriting a world that, quite frankly, is a mess. And we have messed it up, and you're inheriting this mess. How do you feel that you're kind of here trying to clean up all of this from generations before yours?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of anger, I think. Because we knew how bad this crisis was gonna be. And we know that we only have like a decade or so to like really take and turn this thing around before we see irreversible effects. And it's also a lot of anger that the people who are gonna be facing those effects are not the people who are responsible for this crisis. So whether that's like here in Canada, like young people, Indigenous people, low-income people who are gonna like face the brunt of the effects, or around the world. Like for example, in Libya this summer, 10,000 people died from flooding. And while that was happening, fossil fuel companies were making record profits. So I think a lot of young people are like justifiably incredibly furious about that. But what we're trying to do is direct that anger into action.
Wow, that's a great answer. Great answer. Zoe, you mentioned you guys are not old enough to vote yet legally, but what is the unique power that young people bring to the climate crisis conversation?
Yeah, so like I said, it's almost like adults are talking in the future. When we enter these meetings, the decisions that come out of these meetings are going to directly impact my life. And I think that grabs the attention of media, that grabs the attention of politicians, or people who are going to vote in the future, because usually what we see in the media is politicians constantly making climate change a partisan issue. Oh, my policy's better, or his policy isn't as good enough as mine. So, but for us, it's more a matter of, am I going to have a safe future? So we're bringing that perspective to the table and telling people like, hey, stop debating this, start cooperating and taking my life serious.
Yes, I love that answer. Okay, the two of you, when you're not busy saving the world, are there just teenager stuff that you do? Like, what do you do that's like teenagery?
Yeah. I love art, as shown in my drawings from when I was 7. But I think that in your teenage years, and especially when you're in high school, you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life and kind of the trajectory that's going when you're choosing college or university. And for us, what we want in the future is a safe future. And so that kind of relates to that.
Wow. We gotta get busy, Jess Allen.
Yeah,
we do.
We got a few things to do.
Yeah, we do.
Zoe and Sophia, thank you so much for being here today and sharing so much here. Hey there, what did you think? Drop your comments below and join the conversation. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you can find more on everything from food and fashion to pop culture and current events. See you soon.